Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the brain's essential toolkit. The one we use every single second to navigate this crazy, information-packed world. We're going to be talking all about attention and perception, how our brains choose what to focus on, what they do with it, and how they build our entire reality from the ground up.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle a problem we all face, just too much information. Then we'll look at the three main tools our brain uses to handle that chaos. After that, we're going to get into something called the cognitive bottleneck. Think of it as a traffic jam in your head. Then we'll explore the difference between running on autopilot versus taking manual control. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see how we actually, perceive the world around us.
So let's start with a really simple question. Why is it so hard to read a book and follow a conversation at the same time? I mean, you've been there, right? You're deep into a good book, someone starts talking to you, and suddenly everything just turns into noise. That everyday struggle? It's the perfect way to start understanding how our attention really works and what its limits are.
So what even is attention? Well, you can think of it as your brain's super strict bouncer or gatekeeper. It's this amazing cognitive process that stands at the door to your mind, deciding which bits of information get a VIP pass and which ones have to wait outside. It's the only reason you can focus on my voice right now, while all that other stuff, like the hum of your air conditioner or the traffic outside, gets filtered out.
But here's the thing. Attention isn't just one single tool. It's more like a Swiss Army knife, with different blades for different situations. Our brain has these three specialized types of focus it can whip out, and each one is perfect for a very different kind of job. So, let's open up this cognitive toolkit and see what's inside.
First up, we've got selective attention. The best way to think about this one is as the brain's spotlight. It's what we use to zoom in on one specific thing, like trying to find your friend's face in a huge crowd. By shining a bright light on what's important and letting everything else fade into the background, it makes our brains incredibly efficient. Next in the toolkit is divided attention. We all just call it multitasking. This is our brain's best attempt at juggling, trying to drive while talking on the phone or listening to a podcast while answering emails. But here's the catch. Our brain isn't a perfect juggler. Spreading our focus thin almost always means we pay a price, usually in the form of slower performance and more mistakes.
And finally, there's sustained attention, sometimes called vigilance. This is the brain's inner marathon runner. It's that mental stamina that lets a pilot monitor their controls for hours on end, or a long-haul trucker stay focused on that endless stretch of highway. It's a real battle against boredom and fatigue, just to keep your mind locked in on one thing.
And this diagram here really shows why sustained attention is so incredibly hard. It's not just about staring at something. It's this whole dynamic balancing act. You see, it starts with active engagement. Then you have to actually process the information you're taking in. Next, you have to come up with the right response. And all the while, you have to maintain this high-stakes performance. It's a total cognitive workout.
Yeah, and keeping that balance is really tough on our brains. In fact, and get this, studies show that for most of us, there's a pretty hard limit. We can usually only keep that intense focus going for about 20 minutes before our performance starts to tank. It's kind of like our biology is telling us, hey, you need to take a break and recharge.
And that leads us right into one of the biggest ideas in cognitive psychology, the bottleneck. The concept is actually really simple, but it's so powerful. Our brain just has a limited amount of bandwidth for processing stuff. So when too much information tries to get in at once, you get a mental traffic jam. And only a little bit of that traffic can actually get through to be processed.
This chart shows us exactly how our brain deals with that traffic jam. See at the top, you've got all these different stimuli trying to rush in. They hit that bottleneck. So to cope, the brain has to prioritize. It can either filter something out, basically blocking it completely, or it can attenuate it, which is kind of like just turning the volume way down on the less important stuff. That lets the critical information get through for higher processing.
So this begs the question, how does this filtering actually work? Well, there were two big theories. The first one, from a guy named Broadbent, suggested it's a really strict all-or-nothing filter, almost like an on-off switch. If you're not focused on something, it gets blocked. Period. But then a researcher named Treisman came along and proposed something a bit more flexible. She argued it's less like a switch and more like a volume dial. The stuff you're not paying attention to doesn't get blocked, its volume just gets turned way, way down.
And this funnel diagram is a perfect way to picture Treisman's theory. Imagine all that unattended information pouring in at the top. The attenuation process weakens most of it, turning down the volume. But, and this is the crucial part, those signals aren't gone.
So if one of those quiet signals is suddenly really important to you, like hearing your name shouted across a noisy room, it's just strong enough to break through that threshold and grab your attention. This brilliant idea finally explained what's known as the cocktail party effect.
Okay, so we've figured out how we select information. Now let's talk about what happens next. Our brain basically has two main ways of getting things done: a very deliberate, manual control mode, and a totally effortless, autopilot mode. Controlled processing is what you're using when you learn something brand new. It's slow, it's clunky, it takes every ounce of your focus. Just think about the first time you ever tried to drive a car. But with enough practice, that same exact task can shift over to automated processing. It becomes fast, unconscious, and completely effortless. It's how a seasoned driver can navigate a busy highway while chatting with a passenger. This slide basically gives us the roadmap for how you get from effortful to effortless. It all starts with repetitious practice. As you do something over and over, your brain starts to group information into bigger, more efficient patterns. That's called chunking. All this repetition physically rewires your brain, strengthening the connections between neurons. That's neural plasticity. And the final destination? Cognitive efficiency. The task that used to eat up all your mental energy now runs on autopilot, freeing you up to think about other things.
And here is such a cool side effect of all this. I bet most of you can type a full sentence without even glancing at your keyboard. But try this. Can you draw a keyboard from memory and put all the letters in the right spots? It's surprisingly hard. That's because the physical skill of typing has become completely automated, totally separate from your conscious memory of where the keys are. Wild, right?
So, we've looked at how we select information and how we process it. That brings us to the final and maybe most magical step: perception. This is the part where our brain takes all that raw, messy, sensory data from the outside world and somehow turns it into the rich, meaningful, stable reality that we all experience.
And this whole process happens in a very clear order, just like you see in this pyramid. It all starts at the bottom with reception. That's just our eyes gathering up the raw light waves from the world. Next up is transduction. This is where that light energy gets translated into the electrical signals our nervous system can actually understand. And finally, at the very top, we have interpretation. That's where the brain does the heavy lifting, making sense of all those signals to actually build the world we see.
And that interpretation part, that's where the real magic is. To build everything you see, your brain is doing a million things at once. It's figuring out color perception, decoding wavelengths of light. It's doing shape identification, finding all the edges and grouping them together to form objects. It's judging depth perception, using clues from your eyes to build a 3D model of your surroundings. And all of that feeds into the grand finale, pattern recognition, where your brain finally goes, aha, that's a cup, or that's a face. It turns complete chaos into meaning.
So when you put it all together, it becomes pretty clear that attention isn't just some random brain function. It's literally the currency we use to buy our experience of reality. It dictates what we see, what we learn, and ultimately, who we are. So the question I want to leave you with is this: knowing how powerful and how limited it is, where are you going to choose to invest your attention?